When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello, good morning everybody, how are we? It's funny, I always say good morning, and I'd love to know when you do actually listen to the show, because you could listen to it at any time. You might be addicted and just keep on listening to the same show over and over and over again. That would be brilliant for me downloads. But let me know where you are listening and what time you're listening, and do you do it as soon as you get out of bed or last thing at night? Am I the voice that you drift off with just before you close your eyes? That's a lovely little thought. Well, here's a chap today who's really got the voice that you would like to drift off with. He's got that kind of deep, sexy American voice. And hey, I'm a heterosexual man, but I could be turned, and he's the man to do it. He is somebody, I don't know why I said that. I really don't. I think I'm having a breakdown. He's a man today who comes onto the show with a drive to make life better for so many of us who spend our days in jobs we don't like. I think already that we're connected at birth. Starting his life with a dream to be a news anchor or game show host, he, for some reason that we'll find out about, decided instead to go into corporate America, where for 15 years he surrounded himself with the kind of folk that have gone on to become his target audience. The moaners and groaners, the dispirited, or simply the employees that need help to find their swing, develop their potential, get promoted, and enjoy working for a living. Well, unlike many people who have got to a point in their career where success is about maintaining instead of gaining, he decided that he was the man to help them. Pausing his corporate gig, he went back to school and earned himself an MBA and PHD, which literally was the starting point to the second half of his working life, and what seems to me to be the unique path that he had been looking for all along. Now, with his Career Revolution platform consisting of a podcast, blog, video tips, and empowering information to one and all, he's firing on all cylinders. As he says, creating a career takes hard work, patience, planning, and most importantly, someone to help you along the way. So let's find out what was the tipping point to the leap of faith that started it all. Let's find out if he would still like to be a game show host, and most importantly, let's find out how has he managed to find the time to have produced 5 girls and 1 boy. It's with pleasure that I bring onto the show to start joining up the dots of his life, the one and only Dr. C.K. Bray. How are you today, Dr. Bray?
Oh, I'm doing great. What an introduction, I tell you. What an introduction.
You are a man who, I'll be honest with you, I've been looking at your pictures for about a week now. I can't find one when you don't look as happy as Larry. Oh. I don't know if you have that phrase in America, but over here, you're just beaming from every picture I see. Are you always that happy, or is that like a photo mouth you have?
You know, when you were saying earlier that, you know, even as a heterosexual man, I thought that's until you see me and then you'll change your mind immediately. But I think, you know, pictures, a little touch up here and there on those pictures, right? Because at 44, I'm not as young as I used to be.
I'm the same age, though. I'm 44 and I'm going white and I'm just aging. The podcast has aged me. I must be honest. The time zones are a killer. But you look like you're still in college.
Oh, listen to that. I actually think, if you can believe it, that the kids have kept me young because they keep us running and going and activities and sports and music. So there is never a downtime, but I think it keeps you young. It keeps us up and going early and up late, and we have fun. We have a really good time.
I don't mean to be rude, but that's a load of old rubbish, because I've actually got 4 girls and 1 boy. You've outdone me by 1. And if you look at the first child we had, I looked all right, and then the next one, and next one, and next one, and you can gradually see the decay setting in as we produced more and more kids. So I don't know what you've got in your Arizona water, but it certainly is doing you all right.
Oh, listen to that. Well, I'm telling you, we could talk for hours about having girls and what it's like in a household to have all girls. You at least have 1 boy to offset it a little bit. We have a little boy that we're adopting from Ghana. Hopefully we're going to pick him up in the next month or so. So he's going to be my one who kind of keeps the balance amidst all of my ladies.
It's not easy, but you learn more from the ladies than you do from the men. I think the men, we're like lovable dogs. As long as we're fed and we're comfortable every now and again. That's all we want. But the ability to juggle the emotions, the door slamming, the bras hanging over every lamppost or whatever. Not a lamppost. Who would hang a bra on a lamppost? That would just be wrong. But all that kind of stuff going on, that is the true mark of a man, don't you think?
Oh, I absolutely agree. And I tell all my friends that whenever I am overcome, that a good hour run or a good hour of exercise will bring back testosterone and my mind, and I'm good to go. Because oftentimes, in fact, just the other day, I came home a little bit late. I was out of town, came home a little bit late, went to kiss one of my girls goodnight, pulled back the bed sheet, and there were two girls who weren't even my own, not one of the five. And I'm thinking, these two girls are not my own. I don't even know where my daughter is. Now, she happened to be in the next room because they were having a big sleepover. But as you well know with girls, you never know who's going to be in the house and who's eating breakfast. And so, it always keeps things lively.
It certainly does. And your life is lively, isn't it? You've got somebody, I'm doing a daily podcast. And when we were talking just before the show started, you were going, wow, that's a lot. But you're doing blogging, your video tips, you're obviously doing, one-to-one meetings and clients. And how do you manage to balance all that and still, as I say, be smiling from ear to ear in every photo?
Well, I think much like a lot of your past guests and like you yourself, I love to do it. I think and believe it's what I was meant to do. I'm really good at it. I love studying it. I love working with people. And I think for myself, it's one of the best things I can do to give to people because their careers are so important at all stages of an individual's life. And I have a lot of experience, a lot of education. And so it is so fun and so rewarding to work with people and help them find the career where they love it, they're engaged, they're happy, and hopefully they're making enough money, to be comfortable. But it for me is, I say to myself every day, I have the best job I could possibly imagine because I get to help people, I make a little money at it. And people still email me years later saying, if it wasn't for you helping me through that transition, I don't know where I'd be. So I just love it. It for me is one of the most rewarding things I do.
You can hear that in your voice. And one of the themes that I'm trying to get through to the listeners who are in your target audience, they're in the kind of career that maybe they're not happy with, or it's not quite firing on all cylinders, or they're just stagnating, or maybe even that they hate it and they don't know what to do, is there is an easy world out there once you start playing to your strengths. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I absolutely agree, David, because if you do something that you love and you're good at, you can make a living at it. And like you just said, I see people every day who just feel stuck and they say, there's nothing else. I can't get another job. And oftentimes it's just once they make that first transition, meaning they go to a different position in the same company, or they get promoted, or they leave the organization, or they start a business, that once they've done it once, then they realize it wasn't as scary as I thought. I can do it. I have a future. And actually, I'm much happier than I was before. So it's just a matter of just really trying to make that change and get through it.
Why do you think that people are so scared? It's not like there's only one job out there. And I always thought to myself, if I got sacked, I never have got sacked once. Well, I kind of did a long time ago, but that's a story over a beer. And it was probably due to too many beers that I got sort of sacked.
I was going to say.
Yeah. But so many people are in these careers that they dislike, they hate. And no matter how many times you say to them, well, why don't you get another job? Get your resume out there, start looking around. They just don't do anything. It's almost they like the fact that they can justify that the job is rubbish by the fact that it's making them miserable, so they can go back in there and justify it again. Do you find that with the people you speak to?
Oh, I absolutely agree. And it's just the fear of change, fear of doing something different. They're used to getting up and driving to the same place and eating the same lunch and working with the same people. And it's just a matter of saying, I can actually make a change, because they just get in these ruts. And it's when they start to look and say, okay, what can I do different in my life? And oftentimes with my clients, I'll start out with smaller changes in their current job. And then once they realize they can do those smaller changes, then they get brave and they get the courage to say, I can do other things. I can do more. Because oftentimes, David, when I work with people, they all say to me, and it doesn't matter if you're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s, they say, I know I could do more. I just feel inside that I could make a bigger difference, that I could do more, that I could make more money. And I just need to make a change. And it is just that fear of actually doing it. They want to, but oftentimes they just don't even know how.
Well, but that's the nuts and bolts of it, isn't it? You know, we all say, and I've had quite a few conversations today where I've kind of said the same thing, that we all say to people, because we believe it passionately, when you find your unique path, when you find your passion, all that stuff, and it's absolutely true, because I'm living and breathing it at the moment. I'm doing this show, and each episode I feel like I'm growing into it. And the more I grow into it, the more I love it. And it's just kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But when you're saying to people, look inside yourself, you know the answer, you know what you're naturally good at. They just can't see it, can they? They just can't see it. So they haven't got that moment of clarity until it hits them in the face. And then it's almost like, how the hell didn't I see that? It was always there.
I agree. And David, can I ask you a question?
Ask me anything you like.
Okay, so as you know, I read more about you and I've got to know you better. You know, sometimes in your 20s and your 30s, probably same it was for myself, it's hard to see, and it takes time, to put together and join up the dots to where it all comes together. And isn't gonna, for some people it happens in their 20s, for some people it happens in their 30s. For me, it was my late 30s before it finally hit. But you can't see it, and that may mean that you just need to dig more. Was that your experience?
I couldn't see it until it smacked me in the face one day. And I've told this story numerous times. I had a manager, and if you listen back to episode 1, I would say, I wasn't seeing eye to eye. I'm on episode 74 now, so she was a cow. She was an absolute cow. And as soon as she... comes out. Yes, absolutely. It's my show now. I can do anything I want. But she really made my life miserable. And because I was so miserable, that really was when I started looking around. And I've got a guide that you can go on the show and you can download, the 8 successful steps. And one of them is be aware. If you're in your situation and you hate your situation, what most people do, and I think I was doing it at that time, was thinking, right, I don't like it here, so I'm going to do what I'm doing here somewhere else. That will solve the problem. But now I look back on it, and because I finally got to the end when my mojo had died, my personality was dying. I've had a chat with people that knew me for 10 or 15 years, and they said the last year you weren't yourself. But I found that moment of clarity only by being miserable. And I hate to say that that's how most people will do it. I'd like to say that there's a yellow brick road and you're going to walk out one morning and bluebirds are going to be singing and you're going to skip along the road and find, whatever you're looking for, but it's not. But you do have to become aware, and you need to look around at what other people are doing. And every now and again, like I've done on the podcast, you will see something and you will go, I've never thought of that before. I think I can do that. That's when your passions hit.
Oh, absolutely. And it's so hard to do that. Unless something like what you just discussed with your boss happens, it's hard for people to see unless, like you said, it hits you right upside the head and you have to. And then you say, I have to make a change. It just isn't working.
Why do you think, that it's a truth of life that so many people find we call it the big dot, when they're pushed into a corner, that the only way they know is actually to make that leap of faith and jump. And once they make that leap of faith, they actually look around and go, well, A, I haven't broken any bones. B, I'm doing all right. I may not be earning as much money as I was, but God, I'm so much happier. Why do you think it is that moment that forces people to do it?
I think there are a lot of reasons that cause people to do it, but I think one of the number one reasons that they see it is that they know, well, number one, if they have to make a change, they decide, well, if I have to make a change, I might as well actually do something that I want to do. Now, like a lot of my clients, speaking for myself, I wish in my 30s I would have done that. I was working for a Fortune 5 company. It was one of the largest organizations in the world, had a great job, and then they made some changes and they're getting ready to lay people off. And I had the opportunity to leave with a severance. And instead of taking the opportunity to start something new and do what I really wanted to do, like you said, I chickened out and I went to another company, did the same thing, and it was the most miserable 2.5 years of my life. I'm telling you, every day was just like getting up was a chore, going to work. It was the most unhappy I've ever been. And it took that second go round for me to actually say, you know what, third go round, I'm going to do it on my own. I've got to take what I'm good at. So I think a lot of it is people just have to make the decision to say, I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to take the risk. And by doing it through small steps, it's so much easier to do than taking a big leap that sometime life, serves up to us as you're going to have to take a leap, whether you like it or not.
I was speaking to a chap last night, and he was saying that he took a leap of faith because he realised, and I love the way he phrased this, he realised that his career was a train that was going into a bad place. And he said, I either was going to be incinerated or I was going to jump, and I decided I would jump. And he landed pretty heavily, to be honest. And he kind of had to fight his way back. And now he looks back and goes, please jump, please jump. And it doesn't even have to be jumping from another job. It can be like a mental jump, can't it? It can be some moment in your career where you actually think, no, I'm going through the motions, I'm going to actually start performing better. And you will find that motivation kicks in for your career to actually accelerate, where you found yourself in a pool with loads of other employees that were just going through the motions. And when you decide to feed yourself from that, then the job that you're in actually looks better as well.
Oh, absolutely. And when you take that jump, like you said, the jump can be while you're currently in your job and you don't know where to go. You don't know what your strengths are. A lot of people say, Chris, I have no idea where I'd even go or what I do. And I say, take that small jump, like you just said, and do something on the side, even if it's just 3 or 4 hours a week, and test a whole bunch of different types of jobs or positions, or starting a business, or go work somewhere, in the evening time or on the weekend that you think you might like, and test it and try it and see what you like and what you don't like. And it makes that jump when it comes time so much easier if you've had a little bit of time on your personal time in the evenings and weekends to test out what you think you might like to do. Because so many careers and jobs nowadays, if you went and volunteered your time, and I'm telling you, nearly every company would say, sure, we'll take you on for a little bit if you want to volunteer some time, just to see if you actually like the position or you like the company.
Life is an experiment. We're quite happy to go in the kitchen and get the jars out and play around, and if we don't like it, throw it in the bin and think it didn't work. And in our life, I'm starting to feel that it's that as well. We should take a bit of this, take a bit of that, see if it tastes well. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. Don't just have to stay eating the same sandwich. A bit of a silly analogy, but you get my feeling that we've always eaten. We can be creative and we can experiment.
Oh, absolutely. You don't have to do the same thing over and over again. And for your listeners who are in their 20s, I say now's the time for you to really look, because if I would have heard a podcast like yours and listened to all of them in my 20s, I'd be in such a different place much earlier in my life, because I would have thought to, take a lot of jumps, take risks, look at different companies. What do I love to do? And really analyzed and self-reflected. And boy, it would have made my 30s a lot easier. So for those who are in their 20s, I encourage, now's the time to really decide what you want to do and find out what you like doing and what you're good at.
Right. Let's take you back in time. Let's take you down to the little Chris Bray, before the doctor bit became there. And one of the tagline for the show is building our future by connecting our past. And it's a theme that I've become very interested in, because I've kind of stumbled across this, but now I think to myself, this is true. If we look back at the young, tiny little Chris Bray running around the garden and doing the things that you were doing because you loved doing them, were you the kind of kid who would always be there helping your friends and supporting them and running clubs and that kind of stuff? Was your natural talent that you're finding now and you're flourishing in always there, but you'd forgotten it somewhere along the way?
Oh, David, you nailed it on the head, 100%. Because as a young man, in elementary school, middle school, high school, I loved doing exactly what I'm doing now. I loved getting to know people. I loved networking. I loved being the person who was helping other people. But most importantly, I loved to actually find out about people's lives, like what they loved to do, where they wanted to go, what they wanted to accomplish. And so in high school, I was often the one asking, well, what are you going to do? What school are you going to go to? Why? What do you want to study? And it is exactly what I do now. It's just finding out about people and what they want to do and then helping them reach it. So it is taking what I did when I was really young and nearly doing the same thing as an adult. And if you think about it, so many people don't have anybody ask them those questions. Spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, significant others. How many people really dig in and say, what do you want to do? And what do you want to accomplish? And what do you think you can do? And even more important, I think you can do more than that. I really do. And I'll help you get there. That is an amazing thing when someone says that to you. I really believe it is.
So why do you think, Chris, that you forgot what your natural talent was until later? You had the clues. You were already doing it. You knew what you loved. Why did you step away like literally all of us do? I'm not preaching to anyone. We all do this because we get to a certain point and we almost dispel the fact that the things that we liked can provide value because they just seem so easy. It was almost like playing. Why did you step away from that?
Are you trying to make me cry? Is that what you're trying to do?
I would love to make a man cry after I started with the heterosexual comment at the beginning.
What happened was I followed the path that I thought everyone should follow, that the world told me at that time, in the mid 90s and late 90s, early 2000s, that you should be working for somebody, that you should be focused on getting promoted. Forget what you want to do or forget what you're good at. Just go to big corporate and, provide for yourself, buy the house, go on vacation once a year, have a family. And it was just like the prescribed path that unfortunately I never stopped to say, is this really what I want to do? And I think I did say it to myself, but like you said, I wouldn't recognize it. I wouldn't acknowledge it. So I just did what I thought I was supposed to do. And I would say, David, I was a trooper because I did it a lot longer than a lot of people I know, 17 years in corporate America. And then finally one day it came to be where I can't do it anymore. So I prescribed to what the world said, just do this, do this. And then when I realized everything else that was out there, when I discovered you, and you have to realize 6 months ago, I didn't even really know anything about podcasting or, a lot of the online world. But when I discovered you, and I know you hear this name all the time, you talk about him during almost but Pat Flynn and some of these other individuals, that I realized, wait a second. And for me, it wasn't so much about the money. It was so much about, I love what I do. And I have an area that not a lot of people have access to the information because they have to pay for, career development or a career counselor. And how about if I give it away for free? And I have never been so happy in my life. I'm telling you, it just is. Every day I get up and I think, I'm helping people, and you get the emails, you talk about them, you get the emails and people appreciate it. And you think, this is what matters. This is what matters for me and what I should be doing.
I did something today which I think it's the right decision to do. I actually had an email from a listener. And it was a lovely email, really sort of being open and how we're changing her life and she's so glad that she's found us and all that kind of stuff. And then she sent us another one and I thought, she's really listening. And this is to you, Charlotte. I mentioned you before and you're here again. And so episode 89 that I recorded today, your episode 74, but I do sort of, I shift them around a bit so we don't get all the same kind of people. It sort of varies it. All the way through the conversation, I was talking to a lady and I was thinking, this would help Charlotte. This would help Charlotte. And I've never met this lady at all. I've just had these 3 or 4 emails when she's really opened her heart. And I was listening to it and I thought, as soon as I finish this show, instead of me setting it up to go live on the 26th of July, which is going to, I'm going to send it over to her and I'm going to give her it as a gift. And I said to her in the email, I said, look, you're going to be the only person on earth that hears this until the 26th of July, but I want you to listen to it and I want you to listen to it closely. And I know she will, because there's a key in here and I think it's the key to your life. And I don't know why I had that feeling so strongly, but when I sent it, it suddenly made me realize that the podcast isn't just me. When I started it, it was about me creating income for myself, ultimately, enjoying myself and providing value. But now I realise it can actually change lives. And, as Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility. And it suddenly has dawned on me along the line here that by putting your voice into people's ears like we're doing, you have got so much responsibility, probably more than radio hosts who are doing it as a job. We're choosing to do this. So I think there's an emotion that comes out that people are responding to in a crazily passionate way, and I love it. Have you had emails and stuff where you kind of go, whoa, this is bigger than I expected it was ever going to be?
Oh, absolutely. When I started, and I'd love to hear when it hit for you as well, but when I started, I just thought, oh, maybe I'll have 50 people listen, of which 49 were my family and friends, and maybe one other person would find it.
It was me.
And then and it was you, David. That's right. It was the picture. You were attracted to the picture, but and then as it grew, I realized, and then in my mind, I thought it was the topic. Oh, people really need this topic of their careers and what should they do and where are they going, what can they accomplish in life and still support themselves. And then within even about 3 weeks, I started getting emails saying, oh, that podcast, it came at just a time I was making a decision, and you justified my decision. You said to me, like you said in my ear, that I was making the right decision, and it was perfect timing. And thanks to you, now I'm a step closer to where I should be. And it was in that moment I would sit there, and really these have become dinner discussions for us and our family of how people have reacted, because it is amazing to me, first of all, how open and honest people will email me and what they'll say, but how much we are helping. And I never even realized. I mean, I wanted to, but then it makes me really now, boy, I plan my podcast more. I spend more time researching. I'm very careful about what I say and how I portray the information, because I do want to give everything possibly I can in the podcast, in each one that I actually finish.
So how, for people that haven't listened to your show, and I know it's just a small part of what you do, how do you actually structure it? You come up with a subject and then tell us, so that the listeners out there, and don't leave me, listeners, don't suddenly go, oh, he sounds better than you, and go over in their rate. Just go over there and have a little peek and then come back to me. But how do you actually structure your shows?
Well, David, actually, I think our podcasts really complement each other. I mean, because you give so much information and people get to hear others. Now, my podcast is 15 to 20 minutes. It's very much like on a commute to work or during exercise. And I haven't had any guests on yet. I choose a topic, and then I speak to the topic and give stories, examples, and then usually some instructions or ideas of here's how you make this happen in 15 or 20 minutes. And I base it on theory. Now, hopefully you'll never know it's based on theory, because theory oftentimes is boring, but I try to get through in stories so that people can realize, oh, Oxford and Harvard and Wharton and all these have done a million studies on careers, but unfortunately the general public doesn't know those studies. So I try to take them and put them into stories and examples and steps that people can take. And I try to do it in a fun and entertaining, but also a very thought-provoking way. And how it's structured is initially the first probably 10 take you through the first steps of how to develop your career. And from there on out, I just take topics that seem to be what I'm hearing from emails or from some of my clients or in corporate America, what seem to be the hot topics, and I'll build the podcast around that. But I do want to kind of turn more into what you're doing, where I'm interviewing people. I'm just trying to lay the foundation first. I mean, we're only up to about 20. I think we're going to release episode 20 here early next week. And just as fun, we added what we call Therapy Thursdays, which we take a topic about, something about emotional intelligence or how to deal with conflict at work. And we talk about that, and it's all sorts of fun. We have you pull up the couch, sit down, and take a listen, and we work those issues out. So we have a good time.
I must have listened to about 15 of your episodes, and before I was doing this show, I listened to a lot of them. And although I do an hour show, a lot of the ones I really liked were the hour show. And I just haven't got time really at the moment to sit there. And I like yours because they are 15, 20 minutes, and you start them, you get the content out, and it's very structured. I come from a training environment, so I like the way that you really clearly have a beginning, middle, and end. You know what the message is at the end, and you structure everything to get through to that, and you do it in such a short, precise time. What I didn't like about you, Mr. Bray, was on episode 1, you sound as good as you are on episode 20. Now,
I disagree.
You did. I listened to this and I thought, really, has he recorded 100 of these and then deleted them, secretly practicing? How did you do it? Did you just go record, bang, or was it more kind of a process that you developed yourself? Because talking on the mic is very different, isn't it? You don't talk in the same way as you would normally once you're on the mic.
Oh, absolutely. Those first few episodes, David, if I told you how many times I re-recorded those episodes over and over again, oftentimes my kids or my wife would come in and said, Dad, you said that like 15 minutes ago. Are you repeating yourself? I'm like, nope, I'm just starting over. But I am lucky, and I will admit, when I went to college, I did a lot of broadcast communications. So I had a lot of practice. And even when I was a kid, I wanted to be a game show host. You mentioned it. And I would watch every game show. I can name any game show and tell you about the game. And of course, I'd practice. Should I even admit this to you? But I'd practice in the mirror as a young boy under the age of 10 with my microphone about how I was going to be a game show host and practice introducing people and tell them to come on down. And I think that a lot of hours in front of the mirror practicing being a game show host has helped me somewhat. But I do feel I listen to people like you, and it's so smooth. And I will say this as well, David, that a lot of times when I listen to an hour podcast, I'll put it on iTunes on ×2, so it goes by really fast. But on yours, I don't do that because I never want to miss one of your, quick-witted quips that you throw in all the time. So I put you on normal speed.
That is very nice. I think my wife would like me to be on double speed.
That's true.
In everything I do, just get it over and done with. No, I shouldn't be saying that really. But it is interesting because I haven't re-recorded anything. I was clear that when I pressed record on episode 0.5, that was the very first thing that I ever said into a microphone. And now I'm on episode 100. I can hear the improvement, but I was firm on the fact that I wanted people, if they were interested, to follow the journey. I knew that when we do anything in life, we benchmark ourselves against success. And it's very rare that we get the opportunity to go back and hear the very first things that anyone's ever done, or the very first writings they made, because quite often they will get rid of that because they're embarrassed about it. Now, I've actually listened back to, not all my shows, but a few of them. And I can hear the way that the confidence has grown. I think there was an episode when I finally decided, yes, I am the host, and I shouldn't be so uber grateful that people are on my show. It should be an equal balance. And I think in my first shows, I was too respectful, and I think it came across by that. And I didn't realise that only. I went for a drink with some people that I used to work with, and they said to me, really like the shows, but it's not quite you, is it? You seem to be holding back. And I went, am I holding back? And when I listened, I thought, yeah, you're right, I am holding back. So I think it does come to a point when you've got to go, oh, let's go for it and let's see how it flies. And it's when you do that, that's when it flies. That's the funny thing. Once you actually become yourself, we say the same thing again, that is when you suddenly get yourself sprayed in rocket power and you go shooting forward.
Oh, I agree. And I think I need to take your advice because I have received that same advice. I saw some old friends last week and they're like, Chris, same thing. It's good. But boy, sometimes we're missing that spark of just you saying things off the cuff and some things that, are a little sarcastic. And we need more of that because people need to know who you are. So I'm going to take that advice. And probably one of the best reasons I was on the show is to get that advice. And I'm going to take it and see what happens. Throw it in. No re-recording.
Yeah, absolutely. Just press the button and boom. And I had some questions that halfway through the question, I couldn't even remember what the question was myself. And the guest would say to me, sorry, I don't really understand that. And I'd go to them, do you know, I don't understand it either. I have no idea what I was talking about. My mind was kind of thinking about what they just said and what the next question was and all those kind of things. And my mouth was just operating on automatic pilot with no quality control, applying any brakes on it at all. And I was just going on free fall. But I look back on it now and I think that actually was my comfort level increasing. That was me finding my swing. Now, if we take it away from me and you, because we do like to talk about ourselves, when you find somebody in corporate land who hasn't found their swing, but they're very close to it, and you can see they're very close to it, how do you get them to that peak performance when they can't actually, it might just be doing one thing slightly differently here or one thing slightly differently there, or just a change in mindset. How can you actually do that for them?
Well, I'll first say the emotion around that when I see somebody who is so close to excelling, whether it be in their current job or if they do want to make a switch, that it is heartbreaking to see somebody so close to that and not be able to take that very last step. It's just like the last step before you jump is always the scariest. And so oftentimes what I find I have to do is I have to be the one to say the words that very few people will say. The very blunt, forceful, this is your time. What is going to happen if you don't do this, or if you don't take the jump, or you don't take this step? How's it going to make you feel? What type of person are you going to be? And I really try to get them to not only see the future of what it is, but what it means to the bigger universe, what it means to their family and friends, what it means to people that they could affect. And there was one, just a quick example. There was a young man who was 35 and was ready to take a jump. And he was brilliant and smart, witty like you, and just really needed to have his own business. And he just couldn't take it. He was too afraid because he just bought a house, all the things that get us caught up. And I said to him, you're going to come back to me in 10 years at 45. And I'm telling you, you're going to be crying in my office. You're probably going to have lost your spouse because the road you're heading is absolute despair. I can tell you, I've seen it before. And then not only that, but all the people that you're not going to be able to affect, you're being absolutely 100% selfish. I've never seen somebody so selfish who won't take that step, not just for you, but for everybody else you can affect. Everybody you can affect. And it took him about a week to swallow that, that big of a pill. And he called me up about a week to a week and a half later and said, I did it. Today I turned in my notice, and he's gone on to be a great success. So, and sometimes the success isn't immediate, and that's okay, because like you said, you need to learn your skill and your trait, and it takes a little bit of time. But taking that first step is the step to happiness and joy and really doing what you're meant to do and helping others.
And your selling point is, if you spoke to me as you're speaking to me now, I would listen to everything you're saying, because I know that leap of faith that you're talking about, you've actually been through that. That scary last step, you actually did that, and you've come out on the other side. Are you surprised that you managed to do that after all those years? Because it's a big thing. Even going back and doing an MBA and PHD, I'm hugely impressed by that, because I know I couldn't do it. I couldn't study anymore. I studied years ago, and I've now got a mindset that if it doesn't naturally play to my skills, I can't really be bothered. But you went back and you studied, and that's got to be really hard to do. So that guy you look back on, was he always there? Was he always going to make that leap of faith? Or are you surprised that he did it?
Well, I think, David, a little bit of both. I look back at that guy who outwardly looked so confident and so ready to do it, and no fear, and I'm going to make everything a success. And then inside, I was so fearful. I was so frightened, and I often delayed it, I will say, by going to school. Now, I needed the schooling, but I thought, I'll take the leap once I finish my master's. Okay, I'll take the leap once I finish the coursework for my PhD. Not quite yet. Okay, now I'm going to take the leap once I actually finish and the PhD, and I walk and get my cap, my cap and gown and diploma. And finally, I will say, with the help and push of my wife and my family and some great friends, that I actually did it, because I was terrified. And to all the people who are listening, your audience, it is terrifying for everybody. But if you get someone to help you through it, then you can make it, and you have someone you can turn to when it gets rough and it gets tough and hard and difficult. Now, I think I would have done it, but I'm glad I did it when I did, and it was hard. It was hard, and there were restless nights and staying up thinking, can I make it go? And now I look and think, if I would have had help in my late 20s, early 30s, but everything works out for a reason. I needed the education for my field, so where I'm at now is perfect timing. It has all come together perfectly.
And you've got to have faith, don't you? George Michael said that. And if I'm ever laying on my deathbed, I want the words of George Michael to be played. No, I really don't. But what I do want...
song? I about quoted one of his songs that was inappropriate.
Yeah, many of them are nowadays. But one person's words that I would love to be going through my head is the words of Steve Jobs that I'm going to play here now. We do this generally at this part of the show, and I think you've given us the feeling of that you had that faith that it was all going to work out right. So this is Steve Jobs.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever, because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference.
What do those words mean to you, Dr. Bray, when you hear them?
Oh, they strike right to my heart because they are so true. Looking out 44 to my 20s and 30s, it took the time to connect the dots. And now looking back, I can see that they're so connected. But when I was in my 30s and going through the changes in schooling, they just didn't connect. And I thought, it's never going to happen for me. It's happening for everybody else, but it's not going to happen for me. But when you look back, they do connect just as long as you're doing your best, self-reflecting and looking and saying, what am I good at? What could I possibly do? That's when they connect. And like you said, karma, the universe, the world, it all seems to work out. It's just sometimes we have to take a breath and let it work for our good.
I love those words because they are so simple, aren't they? They are so simple. They're so powerful, and they do touch you. Even if it's the first time that you've heard them and you're a young man, and I've played these words to guests on the show that was 17, and even they at their life could go, yeah, I can see that already. I can see that path building up. It's the simplicity of the words that give it its power.
Oh, absolutely. And as a young person looking back, if I was in my 20s, boy, if you could trust those who've gone before you and say, yes, it does work out. Just give it your best, do your best, work hard, and look for what you're good at. They will work out, and you'll be surprised at the great good that you do.
If we take you back to your most unhappy period, as you were saying, would you now class that as your big dot? I'm quite focused on the big dot. It's the one where you suddenly change direction or you decide to do something that you look back and you go, if it wasn't for that occurring, I don't think I would be where I am. It's where so many people who are in the dream killer, as I call it, contentment zone, when life isn't so bad, it isn't so good, but just 1 week, 1 year rolls into another. Do you have a moment that you could go back and go, yes, that was my big dot?
Oh, absolutely. And buckle up for this one, because it was a big dot. And like you said, I had a great corporate job. I was so comfortable. I was content. I was mediocre. I hate to say it. Now, I did a great job. I won awards, did that whole 9 yards, but I was so mediocre. And the quick story of this is I had taken my girls. I try once a month to take them, and they go get their nails done at the nail salon and their feet done. And I had grabbed the Harvard Business Review to read while they were getting their feet and hands done, their nails painted. And I looked at the front covers. I sat down and I saw a name that looked familiar. And it was the name of a gentleman that I had gone to school with, college with, who was a friend, a good acquaintance that sometimes our groups did things together. And I opened it up and I started reading the article, and my wife was right next to me. And in it, I saw that he had been like a Harvard business professor. Now, we're both the same age, Harvard business professor. He had gotten his, Harvard MBA. He had sold a company for $20 gazillion billion and was wealthy. And he had just been named CEO of a large company. And I remember sitting there thinking, I am such a loser. Like, I am a failure. What have I done? Now, the key point for me is, first of all, I just felt so horrible that this had happened. And then I realized I didn't want what he had. I didn't want to grow this big company and sell it. And I didn't want to be a CEO, but that I wasn't chasing the dream that I wanted to chase and that I wanted to do. And that I was just settling to make the good paycheck, to take the vacations and to live a comfortable life. But that it was time for me to actually take those steps. And in fact, I was so depressed, I left early, stopped and got and I like to exercise. I'm a pretty healthy guy. Stopped and got 2 quarter pounders with extra cheese. In fact, I'll never forget, the lady was like, boy, you're going crazy today. You want like 3 slices of cheese?
Man versus food.
2 big fries. And I went home and just ate and ate to drown my sorrows. And I look back now, and that was my big dot. That was the moment when I thought I could do so much more, but not what others wanted me to do or what I thought they were successful at, but to do what I wanted to do. That was my big dot.
I like the fact that there are people like you in the world. My mission is to get more people like you in the world, because I think if we were all singing and dancing and really playing to our strengths, I think a lot of the issues in the world might be a simplistic view, but I think it might be alleviated somehow because the place would be more contented. What's your mission with your career revolution? Where can you see it going?
Well, where I hope to see it go, and like you said, the dots will continue to connect, is I just want to reach more people and give them as much information, free of charge as I can to help change their careers. I want people to feel like that hopefully this show grows big enough that worldwide people know where to go to get career advice, because it doesn't change no matter what country you're in. The principles and the theory are all the same. And it's just a matter of reaching those people to say, you can make the changes. You can get promoted. You can go to a different department. You can go to a different company. You can start your own business, that there are ways to do it. And here are the ways that people have done it, that they have been successful. Because I would like people to know thousands of people have gone before you and they've done this and they've been successful. And you'll be able to do it. And then guess what? Once you do it, then you'll be able to help others. So hopefully it'll grow and I can reach more people, and that we'll build a community then that helps other people, so that they'll have people to reach out to and say, here's where I'm stuck, help me out. So hopefully we'll get a big community that people are helping each other to find and build the career that they want, whether it's in corporate America or small business or an entrepreneur, any of the above.
Because the opportunities nowadays, you're playing to your strengths and you're driving people into opportunities, aren't you? Just the fact that we are online, and I say this all the time because it still blows my mind. I still don't really understand how the internet works, to be honest. I don't understand how I can press a button and I can speak to you and I can download films and that. And I'm sure there's clever people out there that could explain it. But as I said earlier, I don't really care. Education's gone now. So all I do is press this button and it works. But it is an opportunity. We have got the opportunities of a lifetime. And you couldn't have done this 10, 15 years ago. You would have had to have a big network and a big server and whatever. But the fact that you can do this on a shoestring and literally create a life-changing income if you do it well enough, it beggars belief, doesn't it?
Absolutely. 100%. And everything will lead you up to being successful in that area, because no longer, and I love this from Seth Godin, no longer do you have to have people choose you for a promotion or choose you for a job. If you're not getting chosen, then choose yourself and do something, because like you said, you can do a podcast or a blog or have a website for absolutely hardly anything. And that gives you the opportunity to get your voice out there, and it will grow. If you're authentic to your voice and your strengths and you want to make a difference in people's lives, you're going to be successful. It'll grow.
Can you say that Seth Godin quote again? Because I don't want people to miss that, because that is the nugget. That is the gold in these hills. If you could say that again.
Sure. If people aren't choosing you, then choose yourself. And that can be life-changing, because you can be successful. And you may not believe it now, but you can be successful. Like I said, if you work to your strengths, and I think you agree with me, David, if you work to your strengths and you want to do good out there and you become exceptional or excellent at what you do, you're going to be successful and change people's lives. And you can do it. And I love how you said this. For a shoestring budget. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to have a huge network, because once you start putting that out there, people are going to learn about you and share your information, and it just grows from there. And it's a fantastic opportunity that we only have in the world today. I mean, it's amazing what's happened.
You've got a podcast, sir, and I have. And for people that aren't interested in podcasts, only listening to them, there's this thing that when you create a podcast, hopefully you get enough traction that you get put into a section called New and Noteworthy on iTunes. And effectively, when you log on to iTunes, it's up the top. So hopefully you get a lot of new listeners to the show. And we're both in New and Noteworthy, and you've been there for a while, and I've been there for a while. And I'm just coming to this 8-week bit when I'm going to drop off. And I hear so many people going, I'm dreading the 8 week. I'm going, bring it on. I really want to.
Yes.
I really want to know what my actual proper audience is, and not this kind of inflated audience, because then I've got that level ground to actually start working with. Do you feel the same? Because I just seem to have that mentality that I don't hear out there, that other people seem to be, it's a bad thing when it's taken away, but I think it's almost a bad thing that is given to us.
Bro, I absolutely agree, because I think, just let's talk about your podcast, is yes, it gets shown to, millions of people and you get lots of listeners and downloads. But then what happens is when we're doing things like we're doing today, that when you fall off new and noteworthy, like, yes, we may see a little bit of a drop initially, but then what's going to happen is, I've been on your show and I'm thinking, boy, David is such a great guy. And I'm going to talk about you on my blog. I'm going to have you on my show here when I start interviewing people. And it just grows from there in a way that we'll get listeners and people who, want to listen and want to stick around. And those are the people that we want to reach. So I'm like you, I'm not even worried. And if I drop off a little bit, that's okay, because I'm going to reach the right people who need to hear it at the right time.
My favourite quote on this, and I should have it in my office where I'm recording now, because I love this quote, and you'd expect most quotes to come from people like Gandhi and Abraham Lincoln and all those, but this is Steve Martin, and he says, just be so good that they can't ignore you anymore.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. And I love the fact that if you spin it on its head, what he's also saying is, while you are being ignored, you can make all the mistakes you like, and you can get better and better and better, and then suddenly you're the overnight success. But there's years and years and years of honing your craft, becoming more passionate, building a platform until people actually go, oh, did you hear Chris Bray the other day? He was brilliant. Oh, I've never heard of him. And then it starts getting going. But at that point, you should be good and you will get noticed.
Oh, I absolutely agree. And even look at your podcast, and having listened to your podcast, it absolutely, I think from the beginning to now, not only are you good, and I will say, I love your quick whips, or your quick quips, there we go, and also your sense of humor and your quotes and things, and just your authenticity. That's what I've loved about your show, is you're so authentic about what you're doing and the information that you're sharing. I have no doubt I'll just hang on to your coattails as you get more listeners, and you're doing such good things out there in such an entertaining way. That's what makes it so fun, is afterwards I often jot down some of your quotes and think, oh, I've got to share that. That is so good. So I sure appreciate your show.
I appreciate that very much. Just before I say goodbye to you, this is the last part of the show, and then you can go off into Arizona land and run around the desert. This is the Sermon on the Mic, and this is the part of the show when I send you back in time to your younger self. Probably looks the same age as you do now. I don't like to say that. But what would you do if you could have a one-on-one with the young Dr. Bray? Would you put an arm around them and give them words of wisdom, or would you just sort of ignore them? So I'm going to play the music, and when it fades out, you're up on the mic, and this is the Sermon on the Mic.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
What I would say to myself if I went back 20 years would be, chill out and enjoy the journey, and don't worry about the things that you're worried about now, because in 5-10 years, those things aren't going to matter at all. What will matter is start something that you love to do. Start something that you're good at. And even though it's small, just watch it grow over the years. And in doing that, look and see how you can help others, and you'll be successful. And the success may initially not be monetary or money, but it'll be in sharing information and in sharing and helping others get to where they want to be. And in the end, it will all come together. So don't worry now. Just worry more about doing what you love and what you're good at. And even if you start small, over 5, 10, 15 years, it's going to grow, and it will be something that you can be proud of.
And those small gains are the important thing, aren't they? If you look at the big picture of what you're aiming to achieve, you're never going to start, because it's too big, it's too scary.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, it's been an absolute delight having you on the show, and I know all our listeners out there are going, who is this good-looking man? I better check him out. So how do they connect with you?
Oh, you can find me on the web at drckbray.com. That's drckbray.com. I have a website there, and you can find my blog, and you can find my podcast, which is Career Revolution. And on the website, I have some fun and motivating 1-minute career tip videos. I also have a monthly newsletter I send out twice a month that gives information on careers and how to get promoted and how to deal with your crazy boss and how to, change jobs if you need to change jobs. So there's lots of information there for you. And I love to hear from people. So if you have a question that you can't find an answer for on the website or on the blog or podcast, email me and I'll make sure that if I don't send it right back to you, the answer, that I put it on a podcast or blog, and I'll let you know when it's coming up.
Dr. Bray, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. And please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because I really do believe that by joining up those dots and connecting our paths, it's the best chance we have to build our futures. Dr. Bray, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, David, for having me. You're welcome to Arizona anytime, and it's been just really been fun to talk with you.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice That Every Successful Entrepreneur Practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.